And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are looking at the offensive side of the ball for the Washington Commanders. I talked about this a little bit in this last video when we were talking about just the new report that had surfaced that the Washington Commanders were expected to be really aggressive in free agency. And so I think that that also means that the Washington Commanders are going to be aggressive just on the offensive side of the ball as well, because that report indicated that the Washington Commanders were looking to upgrade the defense. But I absolutely think that everything has to be on the table. And so I found this article on Commanders Wire, and it's talking about just the production of Brian Robinson Jr. and just kind of, what had happened there on the last half of the season. And so, I think that the bottom line for the production, I think for him was just, I think the injuries. I think that that is something that definitely played a factor into, I think, just the struggle that Brian Robinson Jr. had, on the back half of the season. And so I think that that maybe plays a factor into it. But make no mistake about it. I mean, this Washington Commanders team, it was led in rushing by Jaden Daniels. He had 891 yards. And so the Washington Commanders need to do something, I think, as far as addressing the running back situation. I think it's something that, in my opinion, I feel like that was the identity of our football team. I think that in a lot of ways, when we dominated the time of possession, we generally won those games. And I think that to dominate the possessions, it doesn't come down to just throwing the football, all over the field, which is one of the things that we absolutely do well. But I think at some point, you just got to go ahead, push forward, knock that other team out of the way, and just run the football down their throats. And I think that that is something that I feel like the Washington Commanders can really lean on. And that means that you might have to address the running back situation, because going into this upcoming offseason, we know that Jeremy McNichols is an unrestricted free agent. And so the Washington Commanders are going to have to make a decision on that. Austin Eckler, he's under contract. You still have Brian Robinson Jr. under contract. And oh, by the way, I mean, he did have 799 yards as well, 4.3 the average, but definitely slowed down on the back half of this. And so, Chris Rodriguez Jr., he's in a little bit of a free agent situation as well. And so I definitely think that there is room to improve this football team via free agency, and you can go out there and maybe get a running back. And so, if the Washington Commanders are maybe looking into the free agents as far as running backs that are going to be out there this season, there's two that I think are interesting to me. And I start with, a player that has 4 straight 1,000-yard campaigns, and that would be Najee Harris. Because when I look at Najee Harris, I look at what he was able to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here is a guy that rushed for over 1,000 yards since he's been in the league in 2021, had 7 touchdowns in his first 2 years. He had 8 in 2023, and then he had 6 in this last season. So he's got a total of 28 touchdowns, and he's got 180 receiving yards as well. That's something that Najee Harris does do well, is he's a very good pass catcher out of the backfield. And so, I think that maybe that's something, if the Washington Commanders are going to be aggressive in the offseason, would they maybe be aggressive in going after a player that has had some success in this league? I believe he's 26 years old. So, he's a free agent, certainly a player that the Washington Commanders can go after. And I think another free agent that really would be interesting, I think, for the Washington Commanders to consider would be a player like Javonte Williams. And so Javonte Williams out of Denver, look, I think with him, he had a very good rookie season. I know he did get injured. He had, I think, 203 attempts, 903 yards in his first season in 2021. Also came in with Najee Harris in the same, I guess, draft class there. He had 4 touchdowns, and then he had 43 receptions. But really, after the injury, you kind of see a bit of a dip in production. And I know that the Denver Broncos were kind of running like a different kind of they had a mix of running backs to kind of throw out there. And so that kind of took away from him. So, I mean, I think he's interesting because here's a player that I think he's pretty good out of the backfield. He has 158, I think, career receptions. And so I think that that's something that certainly fits well with our offense. I think he does run pretty well with his pad level, and I think he gets behind that, runs with a pinch of power. So I do like that about him. I'm just a little concerned, I think, with maybe the injury history coming into this, but maybe this is something that the Washington Commanders might do. Again, they're trying to be aggressive. Maybe this is something that they could do as far as going out and getting a running back via free agency. But I think, again, another thing that the Washington Commanders maybe do is they go out and they get a running back via draft. I think that that's definitely something that's still on the table. Hey, I would love for them to get Ashton Genty out of Boise State. Like, I would love for him to maybe fall there to the Washington Commanders. I think that he's a guy that perhaps you take if he falls to you in the draft. So, those are players that maybe they go after as far as the running back room is considered here. But if we're looking at the wide receiver position, there's a couple wide receivers out here that make it interesting for the Washington Commanders too, if they're going to be aggressive, because we see that I think Stephon Diggs, he's going to be a free agent. I know he's coming off an injury. I'm not sure that he's going to command a lot of money. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go, but he's out there. You have T. Higgins, which is a team that has been linked to the Washington Commanders. Not sure that they're going to want to pay that much money to get T. Higgins. And another player that is out there that, not a lot of people are talking about that I would love to have is Chris Godwin. Out of Tampa Bay. I absolutely believe that he fits very well with Terry McLaurin. I think that would be a dynamic duo, a player that you go after. Two other players that come to mind, maybe the Washington Commanders take a look at. Amari Cooper, he's a free agent out of now Buffalo, so he's available. But maybe Keenan Allen, right? Like, Keenan Allen is a player that's been solid in this league. I know he had a little bit of a down year last season with the Chicago Bears, but look, he's been very productive in this league. And he only had 744 yards and 70 receptions, but he still had 70 receptions, 7 TDs. When you look at that production in comparison to the Washington Commanders, that actually would have been the second best on the team, because Zach Ertz had 654 yards, and he's also right there with the touchdowns too as well. And so that type of production, I think, would actually be even better with Jaden Daniels, with this offense. And so I think that those are some ways maybe the Washington Commanders get really creative as far as maybe going out on the free agent market. I know we haven't talked a little bit more about maybe some trades that the Washington Commanders could do, but that's certainly on the table as well. Maybe there is a wide receiver that does become available that maybe the Washington Commanders would go after. But as I've always said, it's going to be a situation where it has to make sense. I think that that's what I love best about Adam Peters, about this front office, is that this team makes very, I think, smart moves as far as just not going all in on players that are going to really hurt the overall, kind of build to this team. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to see, because we've had this success. And we obviously know the pressure is going to be on us moving forward as a team, but you have got to put yourself in the best position financially so you can build this thing out. So we'll see if the Washington Commanders address aggressively the running back or the wide receiver position. So let me know in the comments what you think the Commanders should do. And as I always say, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right. Enjoy Super Bowl Sunday. All right. Peace.